الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah, ma ba'd. As we all know, the break, what they call the winter break, is coming up. And, one of the things that happens during the winter break is the children are out from school. And so they have like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like this, out of school. So as parents, it's our job to make sure that they stay busy, the children stay busy with something constructive to do. Some of us because some of us work in jobs where we still have to go to work. Even though the kids are out of school, we still have to go to work because life doesn't stop. Bills don't take a winter break. So we have to plan accordingly. We have to plan accordingly. We have to start from now, getting our plan together. And it's not sufficient that for 2 weeks we just leave our teenagers, our middle schoolers, with just a device and let them be on the internet, and that's the plan. So what's the plan for your children? What are they going to be doing for 2 weeks? I don't know. They can go hang out. They can look on the computer. They can, do whatever. That's not a viable solution. Is any time that we leave the children with that much time unsupervised, without a plan, without structure, then usually they're going to tend to lean towards something that is not going to be beneficial for them. So my advice is for all of us to start from now looking for constructive things for our children to do, activities. If you don't have anything, over the course of this break, there are a couple of conferences, Islamic conferences. NJ Dawa has a conference, ICNA has a conference. And so these are things that it would be good and beneficial for all. Even if you say, well, I don't want to sit and listen to lectures. Hey, those conferences are about networking. They're about meeting people, or even just taking your children to an environment where they can meet with other kids that are just like them. Your wife can socialize with others that are just like her, and then you'll benefit and you'll be together as a family. My point is that something should be done where these teenagers are given something constructive to do, to spend their time with, and not allow them to just wander idly and aimlessly without any guidance, without any structure. So this is my advice to myself, and this is my advice to all of us. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps us and protects us. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، حبيبنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد. Continuing with our series of the hadith from Bukhari, عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم رأى نخامة في القبلة فحكها بيده ورؤي منه كراهية أو رؤي كراهيته لذلك وشدته عليه، وقال: إن أحدكم إذا قام في صلاته فإنما يناجي ربه أو ربه بينه وبين قبلته فلا يبزقن في قبلته ولكن عن يساره أو تحت قدمه، ثم أخذ طرف ردائه فبزق فيه ورد بعضه على بعض وقال: أو يفعل هكذا. Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anh, he said that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam one day, he saw nukhama on the wall. What is nukhama? Nukhama is mucus. Sometimes it comes from the lungs and you cough it up, and sometimes it comes from the sinuses, your nose, and it comes downward into your mouth. This is nukhama. So one day the Prophet ﷺ saw some mucus on the wall of the masjid facing the Qibla. He came to it and he started scratching it with his hands, meaning he started to remove it with his hands off the wall. And the narrator says that you could see the dislike on his face while he was doing it. Or you could see that he didn't like that and he was showing it to everybody. And he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that when one of you, or if one of you is standing in his salah, then indeed he is conversing with his Rabb. The word here is yunaji, naja yunaji. Yunaji means when a person is speaking quietly, almost like telling a secret. And there's always two people involved. A person doesn't do it himself. He does this in front of one person, or maybe 2, 3, 4, but there's more than one person involved. فَإِنَّمَا يُنَاجِي رَبَّهُ. He says that while you're standing facing the Qibla, you are conversing with your Rabb. Or he said, رَبَّهُ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ قِبْلَتِهِ, that your Rabb is between you and the Qibla. So don't spit in the direction of the Qibla. Instead, spit to your left or underneath your foot. Then he took the edges of his cloth, of his garment, he spit into it, and then he rubbed some of it against the other. And he said, or يَفْعَلُ هَكَذَا, do this instead. From the very outward, like a superficial reading of this hadith, a literal reading of the hadith would indicate that the Prophet ﷺ is indicating an action. That, all of us, sometimes we get sick and we start coughing up mucus, sometimes our nose is running. Even when we're healthy, that might happen, especially nowadays with the air being so dry. This is something very common. So when that happens to you, don't just spit it in front of the Qibla or in the direction of the Qibla. Instead, spit to your left and down. Or another lesson from this is that the Prophet ﷺ would remove it as well. So from a very superficial way, we learned this from the hadith. But there's much more here. And the fuqaha and the sulaha extracted lessons from this hadith beyond what just the superficial reading of it. Number one, the lesson here is that when a Muslim, especially a leader, especially an imam, when he enters into the masjid, it is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that he would look around the masjid. And this isn't just for the leadership, this is for every single person. Because the masjid is something that we all love and adore. You need something?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
Please forgive
Yes,
me.
no interruption.
Please forgive me. I don't mean to be rude, but I left my phone right there. Please forgive me. Sorry, please. I didn't mean to
So the first lesson is that when a person enters into the masjid, it's from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that he look around and he notice things in the masjid. Not to walk in there as if you're some sort of, big pious person that all you can do is look on the ground and not look anywhere, not raise your eyes. No. The way of the Prophet ﷺ was that he walked into the masjid, he would look around. If he saw something out of place, he would put it back in place. If he saw that there was some filth, some dirt, or even in this case some mucus, then he corrected it. Why? Because the masjid is a sha'ar. It is a sign. It is a representation of the deen. And so for that reason, it is something that Allah Himself calls it Baytullah. When Allah attaches His name to something, then He's honored that thing. He's elevated it. And so for every single believer, the masjid holds a very special place. And anyone who takes care of it is rewarded for taking care of it. You're taking care of the house of Allah, after all. So it should be the habit of every single person that when he comes into the masjid, he looks around, he notices. Yeah, in your own home, maybe you're oblivious. When you go to work, maybe you have no idea what's happening around you. But especially in the masjid, you should be aware, make a point of it, look around, see what it is, what's there that you can correct. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Quran, فِي بُيُوتٍ أَذِنَ اللَّهُ أَن تُرْفَعَ. That in the houses of Allah, Allah has commanded that we raise it, that we make it better, we do good with it. The Prophet ﷺ, in this hadith was narrated by Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu as well. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, عُرِضَتْ عَلَيَّ أُجُورُ أُمَّتِي حَتَّى الْقَذَاتِ يُخْرِجُهَا الرَّجُلُ مِنَ الْمَسْجِدِ. That the rewards of my ummah were shown to me. Imagine. The Prophet ﷺ saw all of our rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presented. That Fula ibn Fula, this is what he will get. This person from your ummah, this is what he will get. So the Prophet ﷺ said, I was shown all of it to the point that I even saw the qadat, which is the dirt, the dust that settles in the masjid, that a man removes from the masjid. He cleans it, he sweeps it, he sees a little piece of, maybe some litter that doesn't belong there, he picks it up. Not only is this a thing of reward, but the Prophet ﷺ is shown it as well. Now this idea of honoring the house of Allah, or this idea of looking around and keeping things clean, this isn't something particular to the masjid. Meaning, keeping things clean is not something particular to the masjid. It also applies to our homes. It also applies to other Muslim spaces as well. In fact, we could generalize and say to pretty much every space that when a Muslim walks in and he sees something out of place or he sees something of filth, that he takes responsibility and he removes it. And we know for all of those things that Allah has made us mukallaf, He's made us responsible. If you fulfill it, Allah rewards you, and if you leave it, Allah punishes you. So a person is not obligated to clean everything that he sees, but if he does it while thinking to himself that I will do this for the sake of Allah, I will clean the house of Allah for His sake, I will keep my house free of filth as well for the sake of Allah, then a person will be rewarded for that as well. Here in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ isn't just cleaning it, but he's telling other people as well. He's giving them a lesson. So this lesson applies to us as well. That if we see something out of place, yes, fix it. But if you have the opportunity, then correct people on it as well. Right? Somebody threw that trash. Somebody threw mucus on the wall. Somebody did this. So if there's people around, then in a nice way, one with hikmah, explain to people that this is not something that should be done. Of course, this needs to be done in a way of wisdom, and it goes both ways. It goes both ways. Meaning the person who gives the advice should learn to give it in a good way, but also the person who receives the advice should be able to receive it in a good way. So sometimes the person giving it may not give it in a good way, but that doesn't excuse the person receiving it from receiving it in a good way. Right? Sometimes the uncle in the masjid corrects you. Right away, you get angry. He's correcting me? He's not my father. Who does he think he is? He's not the imam. He's not the admin. Who is he to speak? He may have given advice however he gave it, but we took it in a bad way. Sometimes we come to the masjid, someone says something, perhaps in a harsh way, perhaps in a way that we didn't like. Immediately, what comes to our mouth? I'm never coming back here again. Or that masjid, don't ever go to that masjid. You go around, you tell everyone, don't go to this masjid, don't go to that masjid. The people there aren't nice. It's the house of Allah. Who are we to criticize it? And these are the people who are occupying the house of Allah. Who are we to criticize them? Perhaps upon their entrance into the masjid and they're taking care of the masjid, Allah forgives their sins over it. And we hold them to account? Who are we to do that? It goes both ways. That when a person gives advice, he should give it in the way that is best received by the individual. And sometimes it's better not to give advice depending on the personality of the person. Right? The command for us is al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahyu 'anil munkar. That we are commanded to encourage the good and prevent or prohibit the evil. So this is a command, this is something wajib upon us to do. But the one caveat to that that the ulama tell us is that we do it in a way that isn't going to make things worse. So even if giving advice in a good way is going to make something worse, then sometimes it's better just to leave it. We know people, sometimes there's a person, he just can't take advice well. And say, fine, and I'll just leave it for this. Or I'll wait till another moment. Or perhaps I'll find someone that person can take advice from, and I'll have that person develop the message, deliver the message instead. Or once in a while, what the Prophet ﷺ would do is he would give advice to the people in a general way without mentioning individuals. So one person does something wrong, the Prophet ﷺ saw them doing it wrong, and then instead of saying, oh you, he says, there are some people that do such and such. And he explains it that way, so no single person is pointed out. However you do it in a way of his wisdom, do it in a way of hikmah. Now coming back to the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, he saw some mucus on the wall facing the qibla. Is mucus, for the people, I guess everyone should really know this, is mucus tahir or najis? Is it pure or impure? It's tahir. It's something that's pure. If you have it on you, it's not going to break your salah. It's not something that you have to remove, but it's something disliked by people. It's tahir, but it's disliked by people. So it's not that a person should tell themselves, oh, this is tahir, let me blow my nose wherever I feel like. Let me blow it on my neighbor. And he gets angry, and you're like, oh, it's tahir, what's the problem? It's not like I urinated on you, this is mucus. No, there are some things that are pure, but they are disliked by people, and we have to respect people on that as well. Or, as the Prophet ﷺ was indicating, this mucus is pure. That's why he's cleaning it off with his hands. But it's something disliked by people, and that's why he's removing it. How do we deal with this today? Well, let's look at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. At that time, when people would clear their throat or clear their nose, what the Prophet ﷺ is telling us to do is to turn to the left and spit onto the ground. And to bury it. Other hadith mentioned to bury it into the dirt. Before, the floors of masajid used to be this way. They were made of rocks and dirt. They weren't like we have today. So you could spit on the ground and you could bury it. What you would do is in the salah, if it happened, you'd go to the left, you'd spit, and then you would spit under your foot, and then put your foot over it, and at the end you would bury it, so that the next person who came didn't sit on it, or have to touch it, or even see it for that matter. Now, a literal reading of this hadith, and I've seen people do this, that they're standing in the salah, on the carpet, and they go, this is why not everything is read literally. The hadith is not meant to be taken in a literal way that you should spit onto the masjid floor, but rather it means that those things that come from our body that are tahir but disliked by people, remove them in such a way that they don't cause difficulty to other people. So when the ground was made of dirt, you spit on the dirt, you put your foot on it, it didn't bother anyone. When you were done, you buried it and you covered it up, it didn't bother anyone. But you do it now there's nowhere to put it. It's going to be there until the next person comes and does sajda on it. The same thing happens with coughing and sneezing and other things. These are natural things. They're difficult to control, but people dislike them, and so we control them to the best of our ability. The same thing in the salah. You might have to clear your throat, and you cough a little bit, and then there's some people who will do it very loudly. They're bringing it seems like they're bringing it from their stomach all the way up. This is disliked by people, and you shouldn't do it. The same goes for other smells, for example. That the Prophet ﷺ forbade some people from eating onions and coming to the masjid because of the smell that will come from their mouth. And so we have to have some idea of how we smell. You played a hard game of basketball, you had a lot of fun, now let me go pray in the masjid. Both of those are good. But you come into the masjid and you smell like sweat, and you cause discomfort to the person next to you. And now throughout his salah, he's trying to concentrate, he's trying to whisper and speak with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but instead he's overcome by your odor. The same thing for those people who smoke. Nowadays, although it's impermissible, the people that smoke marijuana, oftentimes people who smoke weed, again, it's impermissible, but the people that do it stink of it, they reek of it, but they have no idea that they do. Or at least I think that they don't, because I don't imagine people would walk out of the house like that. And so what the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us is that there are things that discomfort people, although they may be allowed, that we have to be cautious of them. So nowadays, since we can't bury them anymore, what do? We can do what the Prophet ﷺ is showing us. That you spit into a part of your clothing, and then you rub it together until it disappears. This is one option. And again, it's rubbing it till it disappears. Before, they used to generally wear clothing that was white in color. In white, you can do that. You can spit on it, you can get mucus on it, wipe it, and you won't be able to notice it. But if you're wearing black like this, and you put mucus on it and you wipe it, it's just going to spread even more. And it becomes obvious to the person next to you. He doesn't want to stand next to you now when he sees the big stain on your clothing. So all of these things should be kept in mind. Next, فَحَكَّهَا بِيَدِهِ. The Prophet ﷺ came and he started removing it. It shows the humility of the Prophet ﷺ. This is Habibullah. This is أفضل المخلوق. This is the greatest of creation. He could have told any companion, go remove that, and they would have all jumped to do it on his behalf. But instead we found that the Prophet ﷺ himself is doing khidmah of this masjid and cleaning it. So it indicates towards his humility. It indicates that he was a person who was the first to tell people to do good and to prevent them from evil. He was the first to do that. And he was the first in honoring the masjid as well. And so he set an example here. Not just telling people to do it, but he himself would do it. It's also another lesson in this, is that if a thought crosses your mind that maybe I won't pick up something because I'll feel good about it. Riya, ostentation. That if I go and I start cleaning the masjid, then people will look at me and they'll think, oh, what a pious, mashallah, what a great Muslim this person is. And then for that reason, you don't do the good act. This is not the example that the Prophet ﷺ is setting. That when there is a good action to be done, don't fear people into not doing it. Don't fear people into leaving a good action. But rather the good action should be done, and then you can work on your heart and your nafs at another time. But don't leave that. Another lesson is to seek good deeds, little deeds. Sometimes things that we just overlook. We don't think much of it. There's a wrapper on the masjid floor and we just walk by it, yeah, whatever. But that is a reward that you just left on the ground. If there was a $100 bill on the ground, you wouldn't just walk by it, you'd pick it up. But here is a reward that will benefit you eternally. It's way more than $100. And we walk right by it. We don't take advantage of it. And there's many opportunities like this in the masjid, outside of the masjid, where you can help and assist other believers. After that, he mentions وَرُؤْيَ مِنْهُ كَرَاهِيَةً. that we could see the dislike on his face coming from the Prophet ﷺ as he's doing it. This is a very important point that gets lost on a lot of people. It is from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to show dislike when seeing something that is disobedience of Allah or something that is dishonoring Islam. Oftentimes people think the Prophet ﷺ was completely merciful. He never got angry. He never showed dislike. He never raised his voice. These are all incorrect. The Prophet ﷺ did raise his voice at appropriate times. He did get angry and show it at appropriate times. And he did call out people at appropriate times. He wasn't somebody that just overlooked everything no matter what people did. There is a time and there is an appropriate place to show your dislike, especially when it comes to Islam, people that are dishonoring the masjid in this case, or people that dishonor any aspect of the deen that is meant to be honored. Or when somebody is openly disobeying Allah. We're not to laugh and smile at that person. We're to show our displeasure at that. Somebody is standing there and he's mocking the deen, he's mocking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we tell ourselves, oh, the Prophet would have been quiet and he would have smiled at them. No, he would not have. No, he would not have. The Prophet ﷺ himself never took revenge for himself. But that doesn't mean the companions weren't ready to do it. You understand the difference? If somebody harms you, then it's up to you whether you want to take revenge or not for that. And the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ was not to. But if somebody harms another Muslim, it's not up to you to decide, oh, I'm going to let him keep harming the Muslim. No. If somebody disparages the Prophet ﷺ, it's not up to you to decide to let that go. It was the Prophet's right ﷺ to let that go on his behalf. It's not our right to let that go. Because there is no greater sign, there is no greater sha'ar of this deen than Rasulullah ﷺ. And that goes for all of the other signs as well. But, an important point. Ignoring harm or ignoring disrespect and disobedience is not being merciful. If someone says he sees somebody doing wrong and he tells himself, I'm just going to smile at him and show him mercy because this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have done, that is not mercy. Why isn't that mercy? Is it merciful to let a person continue to harm himself? Is that mercy? A person is walking through traffic and you tell yourself, I'm merciful. I'm not going to stop him. Are you really merciful? A person is ruining his akhirah in front of you. And you tell yourself, out of mercy, I'll let him keep doing it. That's not mercy. Mercy is to stop that person. So when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam rahmatul lil alameen showed his dislike at other believers, he was being merciful in that situation. That is showing mercy. So these nuances are important to understand, because oftentimes if we just work off of stereotypes without understanding the reason behind it, then we might actually cause more harm to ourselves and to other people. So the Prophet ﷺ, he showed dislike. And this is from the hadith as well. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ. That whoever of you sees something wrong, then he should change it with his hand. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. And if he's not able to do it with his hands, then with his tongue. tongue. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ. And if he's not able to do it with his tongue, then at least he should do it with his heart, meaning he should show dislike for it. If he can't say it, at least show it. وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. The Prophet ﷺ said that's the weakest sign of Iman. So showing dislike at a disobedience of Allah, this is part of Iman. And when a person has no dislike in his heart, nothing that shows up on his face while people are disobeying Allah, harming the deen, mocking it, mocking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then we truly fear that that person's iman is gone. Even his heart can't muster the strength to dislike it. And then continuing, he said, إِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ إِذَا قَامَ فِي صَلَاتِهِ. So when one of you stands for his prayer, فَإِنَّمَا يُنَاجِي رَبَّهُ. Then he is indeed conversing with his Rabb. And as I mentioned earlier, conversing here means that there are two individuals involved in this speech. When a person is praying in his prayer, then he is having a quiet conversation with the Rabbul Alameen. Now a person might say, Allah's not saying anything. This is a one-way conversation. I'm the one who's speaking. I'm the one who's reciting. But this is a misunderstanding. The salah has two aspects to it. There is an aspect that is for the abd, and then there is an aspect that is for the ma'bud, for the one being worshipped. The aspect that belongs to the worshipper is his dua, is his tasbih, is his praise of Allah that gets done in the prayer. And the aspect that belongs to Allah is the kalamullah that gets mentioned in the prayer. The Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the belief of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that the Quran itself is kalamullah, it's an attribute of Allah. Like Allah, it had no beginning, it's not created, it is something eternal. But the words that we recite, that is something created. It comes out of our mouth. So as we're in the prayer and we're reciting, the action, the word, physically is something Allah creates for us. It comes from us. It itself is a creation. But the actual Quran itself that is there, that is Allah's. So in the prayer, when a person is reciting Quran, although the words are his, but the actual Quran itself is from Allah. And so there is a conversation taking place here. There is a munajat taking place here. There is this back and forth that takes place where the Rabb is speaking with his servant. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, perhaps the Prophet said, رَبَّهُ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ قِبْلَتِهِ. That his Rabb is between him and the Qibla. There are some people that are literalists. They are literalists, meaning they want to take everything literally. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He is on the arsh, they will say He's physically on the arsh. That is where He is. But here the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that his Rabb is between him and the Qibla. Nobody takes this to be literal. Because otherwise it would mean that the Rabb is there physically in the masjid between the worshipper and the Qibla. And not just in that masjid, but every masjid across the world. Now He's in parts. Now He's in places. Now He's like human beings and independent upon the location. All of this is impossible for Allah. So every single person, when they read this hadith, they understand that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Allah is between the worshipper and the Qibla, it means that the Rabb is not literally there, but He's metaphorically there. In the same way, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي فِي السَّمَاءِ إِلَهٌ وَفِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَهٌ. That He is a God in the heaven and He is a God in the earth. No one literally believes that there is a God in the heaven and there is a God in the earth. Or that He occupies a space in the skies and occupies a space on the planet. These are all impossibilities for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, these are words used metaphorically to indicate that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching us, He's aware of us, He has knowledge of us, and everything that we're doing. And a really beautiful thing here, and this kind of gets into the tazkiyah spiritual aspect of it, is that look at what's taking place in the salah. What's taking place is you have this worshipper, you have this human being. He's originated. There was a time that he didn't exist. And there will be a time that he dies. He has parts to him. He has fingers and hands and toes. He's made up of pieces. He is dependent. He needs water. He needs drink. He needs clothing. He needs to take care of himself. He needs to wash himself. He needs all of these things to survive. He needs air. He needs people. I mean, the list is endless. This human being who is originated, who is weak, who is completely dependent, he is the one worshipping. And who is he worshipping? The one being worshipped is eternal. He's always been there. He will always be there. In fact, time doesn't even apply to him. He doesn't have any parts. He's a singularity. He's just one. Completely independent. He doesn't need the worshipper. He doesn't need anything else either. What relationship do these two even have? You know, sometimes one human being meets another human being. And people from afar look at those two and say, these guys don't even belong in the same picture. You know, so once in a while, some guy wants to marry a girl, and they're like, dude, she's not even in your planet. Right? She's not even in your universe. This is sometimes a relationship between people. But the relationship between us and Rabbul Alameen is infinitely beyond that. The fact is that we should have no relationship. We should have nothing in this particular situation. We have been ordered to obey, and subhanAllah, even the obedience is created. All of our actions is created by Allah. If it wasn't for Allah, it would never come to fruition. The tawfiq that we get, the inspiration, the capability to act, that too is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He made us, He gave us everything, He made the creation, He made the worship, He gave us the tawfiq for the worship, all of it. And then out of His infinite mercy, what does He do? He says, this is my Rabb, my abd. This is my slave. The action that the slave did, he did it for me. We have no right to that. Logically, we have no right to it. We shouldn't have any right to it. But yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His infinite mercy, He takes something that has no value in and of itself, except what Allah gives us. We have no value inherently, and gives us tremendous value by associating us with Him. Right? We become Abdullah. We become Ibadullah. And then we have value. This building at one point was an office space. It had no value to it. It was a place that was made to earn money. And then it became Baytullah. And now its value skyrocketed. It is a place that people, it's their home. They come here daily, multiple times a day. Their children come here. Their elderly come here. They take care of it. If anything were to happen to it, they would be more upset than if it happened to their own homes. When something gets attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or more correctly, when Allah attaches something to Himself, then that thing gains value. And so this is the situation of a person in prayer. A person who himself is nothing, absolutely nothing, is honored to the highest levels. His deeds are being presented before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what Allah has done for us. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that he is conversing with his Rabb, and that his Rabb is between him and the Qibla. So when that is the situation in your prayer, then don't spit in the direction of the Qibla. Instead, spit to the right, left, and below your foot. Or then the Prophet ﷺ took the edges of his cloth, his thawb, or whatever he was wearing at the time, and he spit into it instead. And again, just to emphasize the fiqhi point here, is that the mucus itself is tahir. You can have it on your clothes, it doesn't affect. But it is disliked to do that because of the dislike it causes other people. And this is something that can't be known logically. It's something that is revealed through us, through wahi. A person might say, oh, it's coming out of my nose. It should be like vomit. Vomit is najis. So then mucus should be najis. Or urine comes out of my body, that's najis. Blood comes out of my body, that's najis. So this should be as well. But it's not. And the reason is only because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed it to us. This is how we know. One final point that I'll make is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the options that he gave, what he didn't say was swallow it. Right? Most of us, if we cough and something comes up and we're in the prayer, or it comes, we snort and bring it down, most of us are just going to swallow it. In the prayer, what else are you going to do? The Prophet ﷺ didn't give that as an option. It doesn't mean it's impermissible. It's still permissible. It doesn't even mean it's makruh. It's still permissible to do that. But here the Prophet ﷺ is indicating to us that taking out the mucus is better. Allahu alam, there might be some health benefits to it that was shown to the Prophet ﷺ. Or perhaps this is just the better thing to do because it is the sunnah of the Prophet to have done that. Practically, what can we do in our prayer? So what I would see my teachers doing is that they would always have a handkerchief with them, or a napkin, tissue, something like that on them, especially when they were sick. And so when they were sick, they would have it someplace, usually in the front pocket here, or in a side pocket that's easy to get to. And in the prayer, if you reach in, grab it, and bring it up in a motion that's minimal, meaning, don't go looking around, finding it, reaching in, oh, wait, this is my phone, and, do a simple thing, know where it is, pull it out, wipe your nose, cough into it, spit into it, and then put it away. As I mentioned earlier, it's not really possible to spit on the floor here, nor should you. And spitting it onto your clothing is an option, but it's something that's disliked nowadays. I don't even know. You can imagine that if you were in the prayer and you spit into your cloth and went like this, what the person next to you would be thinking. He might have been foot to foot. After that, he's not going to be foot to foot anymore. So for us, find the way that's minimal. If you can do it, if you can't, swallow it. It's permissible, although the hadith indicates that it's better to do otherwise. One last point, is that in this hadith we also get a hierarchy. What is that hierarchy? The Prophet ﷺ said to spit to the left. So it means that the right is better than the left. And he said to spit under the foot. And so it indicates that the top part of the body, the hands, are better than the bottom part of the body. And so the Prophet is indicating that if you're going to spit anywhere, the lowest point is going to be the left towards the floor, towards your foot. And then as you move away from that, it indicates towards a greater respect, or I guess a kind of a daraja hierarchy, by which we can sort of evaluate the human being or ourselves. All right, inshallah, we'll stop there. Any questions? Go ahead.
If you're under the weather, you're gonna sneeze a lot during prayer, right? Can you hold on to a tissue or something throughout the prayer?
Yeah, so the question is that if you're not feeling well and your nose is running, can you hold on to a tissue in your hand? You can. And this is probably the best thing to do. If you know you're going to have to wipe your nose, rather than looking for the tissue when the time comes, you just have it folded up in your hand, the left hand, bring it up, wipe, put it back down again. Yes. No one else? All right, so inshallah next week we won't have hadaqah. Mufti Niyaz is out of town. I'll be out of town as well. But then following week, inshallah, we will continue. Mufti Niyaz will return for that. All right, jazakumullahu khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
That's the biggest thing. Over time, you spend studying is more of a sunk cost that we don't take it good an account for that, right? We just account for the results based thing. So you can say yes, it's time is true. And then these numbers are less than
treasury application. So it's basically like it's money management basically. Yeah.
So do you need to know financial concepts?
No, I don't know anything.
So what do you do? How do you describe it?
Java. Like honestly, it's just for me, right? So like if you were talking to like a product manager, then he would know all this stuff. He would know like, oh, this is like the financial application it's used for treasury management. You know, we work with our clients and all. it's like it is pretty much ethics. Basically, I'm doing security for our API. So for the REST API, I'm doing security features, right? You don't learn that. I just think the past 2 months, right? All I've been doing is research. Hell, like 24/7 I'm on Google. I'm looking through documentation. I'm looking through like all these different resources. And all I've been doing is research, right? And then implementing. I'm doing so much research, right? Nobody on my team, right? Knows like I'm the only person who knows what all this stuff. Yeah, 7 days. Then the only new dev, that's who I'm the only dev who's worked less than 10 years. They're all like seniors, senior engineers. One team of devs, and then have a product management team. They have a couple of people like analytics. Because we only have one product. You have like a big company. Like if you look at Facebook, there's probably hundreds, thousands of different products. They all we only have one product. We're selling it to a couple of big companies, right? And then we have like one office, right? You know the Jersey City Financial Center? Yeah. Like, you know where Jersey City is? You know, like right, like the harbor that's right. You know Newport? Yeah. It's like not near Grove Street. It's like one stop away from Grove Street on the train, right? So, you know New York City is the harbor, right? That's like right across from New York City. My building's right there. Like I have. Yeah. Yeah. It's like I'll show you. Oh man, I just closed it. Yeah, but what do you call it? I have like a view, right? The view from the office, it's so nice. Like you see. No, once a week. But the only problem is, right? The only issue is the pay. Right? I'm getting paid. It's not like. It's not like.
Oh no, wait, you guys want to see a total?
No, like without bonus. So it's like that's just my salary. I don't know how much. 2 months. It's the only issue. The salary is like good. And yeah, I don't know. The thing is, right? I'm working on a contract basis, right? So I have 6 months contract, right? And it's like technically contract to hire. So basically, after 6 months, I'm pretty much supposed to be permanent position. Yeah. I don't want to apply. I'm gonna just whatever they give, even if I'm there. Nah, I have 4 more months.
Call of Duty. Super chill.
Oh really?
Dude, what do you find it doing? In the dark,
Thank you, Simon. What does he have an internship? What other internships did he have? Like, what does he have in front of him?
He has like some experience, but it's not like anything crazy.
It's like a regular company? Or where do you
A
work?
small, something.
Oh, and then internship.
But now, he has a small.
The thing is, right? I had good stuff on my resume. I don't know, comparatively good stuff, right? I had, what do you call it, what do you call it? Like, I worked at HCL Technologies, which is like a big like tech firm, right? So, and I was doing, I have good stuff. I had like Spring Boot experience, stuff and shit like that.
It's
right?
fine to have the experience, that's not the problem, right? It's how well can you know it, how well can you talk about it.
Yeah.
Do you actually think that if you were to have a Spring Boot project right now, you'd really do well on it?
No, absolutely.
Okay, right?
No, exactly. That's the thing. The Spring, I'll tell you in the interview, right? The interview, they basically told me, I'm pretty much specializing in Java because I took a Java course. So I'm pretty much, like that's my focus. In the interview, right? They asked me questions about Java, and then he asked me like, oh, what else have you done? And I said, oh, I did Spring Boot. And then he was like, oh, okay, let me ask you a Spring Boot question. I was like, in my head, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna be. And he was like, honestly, bro, like this is honestly, I feel like you should just focus on something like simple, but something that's like popular, right? Like something like, for example, like Python, right? Python's pretty popular. If I'm not mistaken. If you focus on Python and you just specialize maybe like a data analytics, data science type thing with Python, you could get a lot of stuff, right? Me, I focus on backend Java, okay?
So that's what I wanted to ask you, right?
Yeah.
Do you see yourself on the data center applications?
Application.
So you like,
Bro, I'm killing it right now. Like I'm even just an hour back, I finished all my work, and I just I gave him an email, right? And I said like, look over my stuff, like
I mean, long term, what do you want to do? Do you enjoy the application development or do you enjoy other things?
what other thing?
Do you enjoy development or you want to manage it?
No, I'm not managing.
You're not good with, you don't like communicating with people and organizing that?
I could, but I could never take responsibility.
Okay.
Yeah, like it's like then the thing is managers, right? They work overtime. My manager, he works overtime. He works long hours. He's constantly like worried about stuff, and he has to constantly like he has to put out fires and look out for everyone, right? Even for some time he was even doing research into my what I'm doing. He spent like the weekend, right? Because no one else on the team knew what was going on, right? I just told him like, oh, this is some stuff that I'm looking into, and he himself is really doing research to my thing, so he can like help me with it. So a manager has like a lot of responsibilities. Like it's not worth it. If you the entire reason we're going into comp sci is you can have like a chill job that and get paid well. Why would we want to become a manager and work like do all that extra nonsense? I guess I guess maybe he does get paid a lot more, but that's.
It's more so just assessing skill sets and strengths, right? But if you're, that makes sense, so it sounds like you want to stay with the development side. And then from that, it would be either data science or app development, right?
But data set,
Applications.
yeah, application.
It sounds like you like applications.
The thing is, when you learn CS, right? When you have a degree in CS, you're pretty much like your specialty. I'm realizing in CS, when people take CS, right? Their specialty is back-end software engineering. That's pretty much their job. That's their core job.
That's what you're good at, it doesn't mean that's what you have to do.
It's
What
not.
do you
It's not.
want to do?
Yeah. That's like you could do other stuff, but that takes additional like how many months?
Okay,
months
20
of
years
study.
from now, where do you see yourself? Where do you want to be, ideally? What type of
Retired. Retired.
position? 40, now you're 45.
Retired. Some people, if they get a higher salary.
Let's assume you retire at 65. Okay, if you want to retire by 45, then what job will you have when you're 30?
Oh, then I'd have to get into bang at that point. If I wanna.
Can you retire by 45?
Yeah, you can. 100%. If you make it to a senior level position in bank, you would 100% retire.
Yeah, first, that's it.
Yeah.
Second, do you plan to have kids?
Yeah.
So
Like
you
everyone
can.
else.
You can.
You can.
Alright, here's starting salaries for Ben. For Google's 220, for Amazon's 175.
Yeah. Starting salary.
Yeah, starting, right?
Yeah.
It would scale by the time you're 30, maybe we're looking at 350.
350, what do you mean?
350.
Scale how? What?
By the time you're 30,
Yeah.
working at a penny,
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah.
right? By the time you're 40, it'd be 450.
Yeah. You could definitely retire on that. If you save that, you save all. If you don't, if you were conservative with your money, you could definitely retire on that.
Okay, yeah, but then the other thing too is that's assuming that you don't fall for lifestyle inflation. Meaning that you're going to buy a Toyota Corolla, a Honda Accord, instead of getting a Benz with that money, an Audi. Right, once you have the money like that, you're not gonna sit and be like, yeah, I'm okay with taking the Honda. So, oh, you're gonna go get the AMG or something.
Honestly, I'm fine with that Honda Accord, bro. I don't need a Benz. Like,
That's right now. Once you have so much more money,
yeah.
it'll make more sense to do that. But it's not enough to retire on. That's the problem. Because you'll have kids to support and
Right. You're saying like if you have a family, you're constantly gonna be working up until like 60.
like you could retire, yes, if you just choose to live by yourself.
Oh,
With your wife, I don't know, it might be dicey, but could
because you're like I understand because kids have their responsibilities keep going, right? But with your wife, right? Your wife just lives with you. You just have to like,
but you still have to head in and take care of other things there, right? And the salaries I mentioned, this is all pre-tax as well. If you're making that much, it'd be such a high tax bracket anyways,
yeah,
right? Likely the New York taxes as well.
yeah.
So your net
50% tax
Okay,
rate?
because your taxes and your Roth IRA and your regular.
Isn't Roth IRA for retirement? Yeah, so wouldn't that help you retire?
That's capped at 6,900 a year. There's another IRA that you can do.
To be honest, bro, you know more about the money stuff than me, bro. I'm gonna be honest. Wait, you were a finance major, I wasn't.
See, that's not, but the thing I'm trying to get at is where do you, if you're planning to have a family, right? And if you want, I'm not saying,
I mean, it doesn't have to be like retired exactly 20 years from now, but I do want to retire a little bit earlier. Like the whole point of CS is to make good money while also like being kind of comfortable, right? Like living comfortably. I don't like. It is difficult. It might not be.
we're
possible.
making good money compared to everyone else, but
It's not.
inflation is very high. Right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Like we can't look at it like, oh, I'm making more than this dude who works in McDonald's or something, or this dude who's a, I don't know, like a photographer, right?
Yeah.
Because they're already struggling. It's not us versus them, it's us versus the economy at this point now.
Yeah.
Maybe like 10, 20 years ago, I would look, oh, I'm doing better than my peers, right? But if everyone's suffering, then it's
It
just
doesn't
matter if I'm
matter,
doing
yeah.
better than them. I need to do better than the market, right? Because Honda Civics, what, 10 years ago was 15K, now it's 30K.
Dude, I can never move out, bro. Like, but if I move out, all this money is just coming in and going out, you know?
So,
That's essentially what it's looking like right now.
but that's what I wanted to ask you. What do you want to be doing 20 years from now? Do you want to be in a dev position? Do you want to be in a management position? Do you want to stay in the tech world?
Yeah, 100%.
So you want to stay in the tech world? So then we're left with two things. You want to become product manager, project manager, or tech focus, like a developer or a technical project manager.
That's the thing, right? I'm realizing, right? Like the tech stuff, it's fun, right? When you're young, what I'm realizing when you're young, right? When you're like 22, 23, whatever, right? You have the brain capacity, like, or I guess the energy, right? To like, because a lot of times expanding a lot of your like thought process every day, right? Because you're constantly like, okay, why does this work? What is going on here? What's going on there? I think I'm realizing, right? Within like 10, 20 years, you're gonna get like, it's gonna weigh on you. You're gonna like,
No, I think it differs from person to person, right?
yeah,
Like my dad first, he loves solving stuff, so he chooses
Right.
to be a dad. He'll be like a senior level dad, but he likes coding, right?
right.
Other people will code for a bit, but they're like, all right, this isn't for me. Let me be a technical project manager where you oversee the devs, right?
Yeah.
Or you can just be more like a businessy project manager where you're talking more with the clients and still oversee some devs, but primarily you'll focus on those functions. I would say those are your three options here. Then the fourth one would be data science. So data science, then development, application development, technical project manager, and then more business service project manager. But between the two project managers, they can like overlap, intertwine a bit.
But do project managers, isn't that just like a kind of a nonsense HR position? Isn't that, I always thought it was something like that. It was some kind
So,
of,
what project management is, the best way for me an example for it is, let's say we run a construction company and we build houses.
yeah,
How many people do we need to create the blueprint to a house? Or let's say we have a group of 11 people, right? How many people of that 11 should be designing the house, and how many people should be building the house?
probably 2 or 3 should be designing the house, and like the rest should be building it.
That's right. Say 2, then you're up to 9 building. Now, same thing, your PMs will be the designers, your builders are your devs,
Oh, I see.
right?
Do project managers, but they don't need, they don't have tech experience, right? Project managers? Because,
They don't have to, but they can.
what is the difference between a product manager and okay, product manager?
Product manager oversees a specific product, so let's say I work at OpenAI, so my product would be ChatGPT, that's the main thing I oversee.
Yeah.
Whereas as a project manager, you're sort of overseeing a team or something, right?
Oh, okay. Okay, so project manager and product manager, right? They're mostly the same, except project manager is what, like, is it?
So you're doing the same thing.
Okay, essentially the same thing. I'm friends with one of the dudes who's like heading up the product management team, right? And I asked him, like, what do you guys do, right? So I'm confused. Like I understand. Okay, we are well, like my team is building out the application. There's a sales position, a few sales guys. They're selling it. They're going to the other companies and selling it. They're working with the companies to try to deal with it. What are you doing, right? And he was like trying to explain it to me. He was basically like, oh, I'm pretty much just managing the what do you call it, the development of this project, right? And like trying to see like trying to figure out the requirements that we need and trying to talk to the clients. And a lot of times I'm in meetings with clients and trying to figure out what they want and how we can speak
Right.
together with that team. Yeah.
So you have your devs and PM's the middleman.
Yeah.
The PM talks to the client first, and the client says, "Oh, this is what I want to happen. I want to have this done." Right.
Right.
So then we get all the requirements, what is needed,
Yeah.
plan out the budget, and see everything like that. Then we oversee our dev team, and we're like, okay, I'm going to delegate